messenger.
Good morning, everyone. Happy to have you with us this morning with the ALIWA group. Just by way of introduction, ALIWA is the Africa Leadership Initiative West Africa, and it's a group of leaders who are focused on building a good society. The initiative was founded on the principles of values-based leadership, basically to address the foremost challenges of our times. Since the graduation of our first class in 2006, the fellowship has grown in size and capability, and we currently have about 100 fellows in Ghana and Nigeria who are driving the vision and mission of fostering enlightened leadership, open-minded dialogue, and promoting regional integration. As you can see this morning, we have with us fellows of ALIWA from both Ghana and Nigeria. The ALIWA Fellowship is one of 14 fellowships globally that make up the Aspen Global Leadership Network. So this morning, we're hosting just another one of the ALIWA Good Society Conversations. And the conversations basically is our platform in ALIWA for fellows to address topical issues confronting society. And what they do is share valuable insights and ideas and solutions and different ways they're intervening in the problems we face in society. A lot of the times, these conversations are difficult, but they must be had. They're very necessary in order to draw attention to salient issues that are plaguing our society. And it's our aim that as ALIWA continues to host these conversations, we will amplify the issues and prompt our audience into urgent action and join us as we move society to become one that is good and equitable for all. So I'm happy to hand over the session to our moderator this morning, Bernard Avle. Thank you, Bernard.
And welcome everybody. My name is Bernard Avle. I am a broadcast journalist. I work on radio and television in Ghana. And I'm happy to say I'm also a member of the Carifikuo group of ALIWA Fellows. And we had a great time. My job today is to simply steer a conversation involving some very great people who are doing extraordinary things in the area of education in general. Now, a conversation cannot happen with only us talking to you. So we're happy to have you join us. And in the last part of the program, you can contribute either via questions or comments in the Q&A section, which is on your screen at the bottom. So today we're trying to not just complain about a problem, but we're trying to highlight and showcase practical ways of dealing with these problems the ALIWA way. And I have a very rich panel indeed. I have 4 persons who are doing different things in education. First, we have Olanike Akerele Desouza. She's an education consultant and a board member of Teach for Nigeria. We'll call her Nike for the purpose of this program. Nike, thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Thanks, Bernard.
Great to have you. We also have Dr. Yaw Perbi. He's the co-founder of Perbi Caps Library Services Ghana, but he does so much more. Dr. Perbi, welcome.
Thank you, Bernard. It's good to see you.
I'll call you Yaw for the rest of the session. Hope that's okay.
That's wonderful.
Brilliant. We're also privileged to have the Secretary for Child Lifeline Nigeria, very accomplished woman, Sally Udoma. Welcome, Sally.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. And certainly last but not least, Director of Operations, Alpha Beta Education Centers, Dr. Naomi Adjepong. Naomi, great to have you. Welcome. Naomi, are you there? Naomi is there. I'm sure we'll hear from her as the conversation goes on. So what we'll do today is to acquaint... Great, thank you. So we're going to acquaint ourselves a bit more with our panel members. Then Nike has agreed very kindly to give us some more foundation on the issue of inequities. She will do a quick walk through a West African case study of access to education and a state of play in Ghana and Nigeria. After that, we will hear from the panelists on their various interventions they've brought into this very important aspect. Then we'll take your comments. But I need to say that while we are not framing this as a COVID conversation, it's important to recognize that what the pandemic has done is to highlight inequities, inequalities, and gaps in various sectors. It's also managed to damage jobs, but that's on the bad side. On the good side, it's brought out innovation, digital transformation, adaptability, and more importantly, it's helped us to redefine our priorities. That's why we're happy to have this conversation. Let me start with Nike. Tell us in 2 minutes who you are, what you do, and what you bring to the conversation.
Thank you, Bernard. Prince, could you please remove the slides for now after the introduction? Thank you very much. That was very eager, very proactive of you. Thank you so much, Prince. Okay, so just very quickly, as you said, so welcome to all my panelists. It's good to see everybody. And thank you all for joining us this morning. So with regards to my background, as you said, I'm an education development consultant. I have about 30 years career. I spent about the first 15 years very much around business consulting, financial consulting, audit, and then moved into the human capital space and started 2 companies in human resources, focusing on recruitment, skills development, psychometric assessments, leadership development, really very much focused on human capital, and then got very involved in the education sector because I wanted to know what was happening with skills development and why we weren't getting people, young graduates into jobs, etc. So got passionate, got involved in the education sector, and then co-founded Teach for Nigeria with a couple of other people, and would love to share more details about that later. But yes, that's it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Yaw, what else can you tell us about who you are and what you do?
All right, thank you very much for this, Bernard. Obviously, I'm an ALIWA Fellow. My group is the Sankofa Group, 2008, I believe. But basically, I like to describe myself as a husband of 1 wife, which is very important. My wife is Naomi Adjepong Perbi. She's an economist, entrepreneur, and co-founder of Perbi Cups. I'm a father of 6 children so far.
Wow.
Medical doctor by training. But after a fatal road traffic accident, which you know about, Bernard, while I was serving with the United Nations in Côte d'Ivoire, I felt the Great One had spared my life and wanted me to give the rest of my life to preaching the gospel and raising younger leaders. So I'm the global CEO of the HUD Group, which raises leaders holistically, which I co-founded in 2003 in Ghana, but now has operations in 22 countries on all 6 continents. Wow. I'm not an educationist by training, but I'm one at heart and in practice. That's why I teach and I write. I've authored some 15 books. Interestingly, one of them in 2005 was actually entitled Read. You are illiterate if you can read, but don't. At that time, my target was mainly young people. Now, as a father of 6, I'm focusing on an even earlier intervention in children. We call them cubs because calling them kids makes us goods. Both Anjali and I have education in our bones. We actually grew up on the University of Ghana campus together. Our parents were professors at Legon. My grandfather was an emeritus professor as well. So no doubt education is in our DNA. And I'm also in the international education space in Canada. We homeschool our children and they read like crazy. So in Montreal, where we've been domiciled for the last 11 years, we live right opposite the municipal library, and our children are known for coming to borrow books in suitcases. And so being such voracious readers, we're concerned coming to Ghana in 2017 for a 9-month-long furlough, and we are concerned about access to good books and many books. Yeah, so we shipped a couple of thousands of books planning to share with other Ghanaian children and perhaps sell them when we're leaving. The need is served and the interest is generated is what resulted in Perbi Cap's library services today.
Wow, you've clearly been busy. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Sally, please tell us a bit more about yourself.
Okay, well, let me start with a confession. I don't have a background in education. Okay. I actually have a legal background. I qualified as a lawyer, was called to the bar in 1981 and spent 30 years working as a lawyer in the oil and gas industry in Nigeria, in France, and in the UK. Wow. I retired from Chevron as the regional general counsel for the upstream Europe, Eurasia, and Middle East region in 2012. Came back to Nigeria and worked as a consultant in oil and gas law till last year, since when I have focused almost exclusively on Child Lifeline, which is the charity I'm going to talk to you about. It was founded in 1994 by my late mother, Marian Shukwade, who was an educationist all her life. So obviously I've been involved in it since its founding. I was a member of the Totem Bonum class in 2006 of ALIWA, which gave one an opportunity to step back from your busy career and business and think about the bigger issues. What is the good society? What is the society we would like to see? And what is our role in changing to achieve the good society? And although I was already involved in Child Lifeline, that spurred me on to actually adopt as my venture, making a much greater contribution to Child Lifeline.
Wow, thank you for sharing. And Sally, small point there. You were called to the bar in 1981. That's the year I was born.
I know I'm old. Don't do the sums.
No,
don't do the sums.
No, I mean, it's great. ALIWA has brought us together. That was the year I was born. So.
Oh my goodness.
And Naomi wasn't even born at the time. Naomi, please, you have the floor. Tell us more about yourself.
All right, morning everyone. So yes, as Bernard said, I wasn't born in 1981, so that might make me the youngest person around on the panel, but I'm glad to be here. I'm part of Coffee Core class, so the same class as Bernard, and I wear several hats, just like a few of the other panelists. My background was actually in medicine. But for the last 10 years, I've been in the education space. So again, education is probably in my DNA. My family have run Alpha Beta education centers for the last 32 years. So I came back 10 years ago and have been working in operations at the school since then. But then somewhere along the line, probably about 7-8 years ago, I shifted my focus a little bit to working on curriculum that develop leadership skills, entrepreneurship skills, and in young people, because I felt that that was a missing link in our education system that was really important to making sure that we're able to push Ghana and Africa ahead. Children were finishing school not necessarily with the skills that they need for the 21st century. And I think that we thought that was a big problem, and it was one I was very passionate about solving. So I've been working on that ever since with very good results. 2 years ago, we founded a subsidiary company called Skill Up Africa. And Skill Up Africa was focused on personal and professional development. So we run, the idea was really what can we do to promote lifelong learning? So long after formal education, what are the other options for short courses that people can have for personal and professional development? So that's my latest project. But what I bring to the table today is the project that we're working on, which is like a Learn More to Earn More project for specifically for senior high school graduates, just to prepare them for the world of work and entrepreneurship, to provide opportunities for them once they finish school. So that's my contribution today.
Thank you, Naomi. Thank you all for sharing. And we look forward to hearing your various interventions in your own different ways. But in order to appreciate these interventions, we need to understand what problem we're solving. What is the state of play with inequity? How different is that from inequality? And to do this, Nike will walk us through some quick slides to put us all on the same page. So Nike, thank you again for doing this. Please take it up.
Great, thank you, Bernard. And yes, please, Prince, you can go ahead and share the slides. Thank you so much. A full screen to the second screen slide, please. Great. Prince, thank you so much. Second slide, please. Okay, so when we're talking about inequity, we really, this picture gives us an idea. It's a nice, lovely, colorful, but very simplistic way of really just defining equality versus equity. I think most often we sort of think that they're the same, but in a way they are, but they're not really the same. So equality is a subset. It's a component of equity. Now, when we say the word equity, the words that should come to our minds are two words: fairness and justice. So is the education system just? Is it fair? Because I'll give an example. So we have free basic education both in Nigeria and in Ghana. So when we say free, it means that children are not paying for school. So the government bears the brunt of the cost of that education. So it means that children technically can just go to school. It sounds pretty simple. So that means that the government has given everybody equal access to education because they've made it free. But we all know that that equal access does not translate to fair access. It's not equitable. So it means that some children, for example, because we're not all equal. So if we looked at issues around, let's say, socioeconomic background, the same access that we're talking about to education is not the same between rich people and poor children. So for example, poor children in slums, in disadvantaged, marginalized communities, perhaps disabled children, children that are vulnerable, they don't have the same equal access to that education. So the system may not be equitable for them. So when we look at this picture, it means that to achieve equity, we've got to give everybody, put support and interventions in place that allows every individual to have that opportunity to be able to have a level playing field. And that's really what equity is about. So when we talk about things around, like for example, poverty is a major part. So in Nigeria, for example, the World Bank says that 50% of the population is in poverty. So there is absolutely no way that children who are poor will have the same opportunities as children who, as I said, who have a good background and financially capable. And of course, poverty does affect educational outcomes, and it does affect learning. So we need to be aware of that. So equity, that's an example of equity. So another example of equity, for example, is the rural divide versus the urban divide. So children in the rural areas, in the villages, out of the cities, their opportunities to have the same access and quality education is not the same as you would have perhaps if you were living in Abuja, Lagos, Port Harcourt, Accra, for example, in the major cities, where there's more investment in those areas in terms of education. So if you were in the rural area, what would then happen is that you're disadvantaged, and therefore you need to have you need to be supported more to be able to access education. So for example, do we have enough public schools in the rural areas? Do we have, because the populations there, do they have to walk for miles to access public education? Do we offer them a bus system? How do we get them to have that access into education? So the rural sort of urban issues really arise because African cities are increasingly becoming more urbanized. So if we look at gender, for example, we have gender inequity as well. So for example, girls in many areas of Nigeria and Ghana at certain ages have to, some of them will get married, early marriage, pregnancy. And so they're not accessing education the same way as you may have boys. So we have gender inequity. Then you have more and more increasingly, both in Nigeria and in Ghana, the increase in private education in the two countries has therefore caused an even greater divide now between those children that are going to public schools and those children that are going to private schools, even though a significant number of them are going to what we call low-cost private schools. So you've got that divide. Another example, final example of inequity, for example, is if we look at what's happening during the pandemic. So we have a digital divide now. So a lot of what was happening was because children couldn't go to school, couldn't go to physical schools, we were now looking at options, the government and private sector and NGOs were looking at options of running TV learning and using the radio, and many went onto the internet. But if we look at this, how many children have access to the internet and technology tools and TVs? So it's not equal. So we've got an increasing digital divide now that's happening that is just been made worse because of the COVID pandemic. Prince, next slide, please. So I just want to share very quickly with us some of the key data that's coming through. Now, this is not all the data, and not everything that's here listed here is all about inequity. But underneath a lot of figures, you have to then begin to see what is happening with figures that are, with data that's happening in terms of opportunities for us to resolve issues of inequity. So if I look at Ghana, if I look at Nigeria, for example, so latest statistics, data on out-of-school children, for example, in Nigeria, says 13.2 million children are out of school in Nigeria. Now that's a significant amount. That's like the size of a country. Now, Ghana has very high enrollment rates at primary school. So their out-of-school children is not as much as nowhere near Nigeria. Nigeria obviously is, we're a country of 206 million people. Over 66% of the population are children, are youth. So Nigeria is really, really facing a huge challenge in terms of getting its children into school. So the demand for education is just so much more. So how do we get all these children into school? Because how do we make education, even though it's free, we have to ask ourselves, why is it that children can't get access to that education, and we begin to resolve some of those issues? So if you look at some of the statistics, for example, the net attendance for primary school in Nigeria is 66%, 66.7, completion rate of about 70%. So that means that children at the primary school age, only 66% of them are actually going to school, which could be contributing to part of the children that are out of school. And of all those children that are going to school, only 70% are completing primary school. In Ghana, for example, you have 81% of the children who actually enter primary school are completing their primary school. So Ghana has significantly more improved performance in terms of its primary school. What is even not so encouraging is the fact that in Nigeria, for example, the enrollment at the secondary school level is only 42%. So when people go to primary school, you literally have only 42% of them going into secondary school. So we're losing a whole bunch of children after primary school who are not going to the second stage of their education, even if it's free. So there must be barriers, inequities that are resulting in some of these figures. Very quickly, just to summarize, for example, the mean years of schooling in Nigeria is 6.2 years. So the children are only going to school for about 6.2 years versus what we would expect of 10 years. And then in Ghana, 7.2 years versus 10 years. Now, an example of inequity in terms of, look at what's happening to the poorest 20% of Ghanaians. They're receiving only 3 years of education versus their rich counterparts who are receiving 9 years.
Anike, we are a bit behind time, so you may want to speed up.
Yes, I'm just going to wrap up very quickly on the next slide and just pick 1 or 2 things from there. So, I mean, again, quality of education is an issue. So if we look at the numbers that are coming through in terms of children who cannot read and write, so literacy is an issue even at the basic of levels. So if 60% of primary 6 teachers aren't, pupils are not able to read, how then do they become literate? How do they move on to the next stage of their education? So the statistics are not looking encouraging, even though that, you know, the government is trying and the private sector and NGOs are trying, but we certainly have a lot of challenges across Nigeria and Ghana. Thank you, Bernard, and back over to you.
Thank you, Nick, and sorry for hurrying you up, but look, you've given us a good foundation. So there's clearly an inequity with access, there's inequity with quality, and also you've revealed nicely the public-private divide, the rural-urban divide, the digital divide. So you've given us a lot to work with, and I really want to thank you for this. So I'm going to come to Yaw. Perbi cups and other things. What are some of the innovative ways you and Angele are addressing this challenge? Take it up.
All right. So thanks. I would like to state right from the beginning that, as I said, this story of Perbi Cups Library Services sprang out of our own family's experience. And so what is known as Perbi Cups Library Services today is an evidence-based, cost-effective, time-saving, online literacy promoting endeavor that has an audacious desire to see every African family successful. Every African family successful. A product of an enlightening culture of leisure reading. Now, our mission is to deliver this evidence-based intervention, and later on I'll explain why we call it evidence-based and how it being evidence-based itself has everything to do with education, equity, or inequity. But our mission is to deliver this evidence-based intervention to an engaged community of families who are hungry to know more so they can be more, do better, and succeed. The current beneficiaries of our intervention are about 700 children from 250 schools. And we want to see 5,000 children, irrespective of their social class, and getting access to this great value by the end of the year. Now, Perbi Cups, it's an intervention both in terms of leveling the playing field, equality, and also equity in the sense of giving a fair chance of every child succeeding. Now, equity ensures that where you were born, your parents' income, your tribe, where you live in this world or on this continent or in our country, does not predict whether you will succeed in school or your education. So let me share how the Perbi Cups intervention is hacking away at the challenge of education inequity in Ghana. First of all, the first level of education inequity we've been able to bridge is the inequity between Africa and the rest of the world. I mean, COVID-19 has shown us how flat and borderless our world is. Our children no longer just compete within Ghana or even within West Africa, but on the global stage. So education interventions ensure that any child in Ghana has access to the same educational resources as a Singaporean, the Norwegian, or American child has. And again, as someone in international education space in Canada, I cannot overemphasize enough how important this is, so that nothing about our education is, excuse me to say, in the words of Trump, shithole. The second level of education equity that has been achieved with this intervention is within the country. You won't believe how jealous others in other regions of the country feel about those in the capital, Accra. Accra is not Ghana, and Ghana is not Accra, they usually would say. Now, parents in Ho, Kumasi, Takoradi, wherever it is, are excited to be able to access these library resources anywhere. In fact, one of my medical colleagues who has been posted to a not so desirable part of the country has been so grateful that his children don't have to miss out on this educational feast. The third level of inequity that is being tackled by this intervention is inequity in reading itself. As someone has said, there's learning to read, and then there's reading to learn. All reading no be reading, Bernard. There are levels. So some parent in a school in which we are doing an intervention was upset that their child wasn't reading his school notes. It turned out after our intervention that the child couldn't really read, period. So it's not that the child doesn't like science or social studies, the child can't read. Like the illustration Nika gave in the beginning when she shared the picture of equality, giving everyone the same size of boxes to stand on, irrespective of their height, is not the solution. It is a grave sin to give everyone the same pool of books to read. Not all 10-year-olds have the same shoe size. You need to measure. And that is exactly what we do, scientifically measuring. So there's something called the Lexile score, measuring where every child is at their level of reading. I'll give you an example. Our oldest son is, when he was in class 2, was already reading at SS1 level. You see, if you give him a class 2 book, you totally bore him, and then he doesn't read, and you say, what's wrong with this child? You know, on the other hand, in our testing, we've come across children in JSS2 who have to be given books at the Lexile level of children in class 2. The fourth and final angle of inequity intervention is how leisure reading itself that we are providing is a great educational leveler or evener of quantity, quality, and access. By the way, to be clear, leisure reading, also known as recreational reading or pleasure reading, voluntary reading, independent reading, is self-selected reading of continuous text for a wide range of personal and social purposes. It can take place in school or out of school anytime. Now, these 3 facts make reading an evener. Research has shown that, number 1, reading enjoyment is more important for children's educational success than their family's socioeconomic status. Think about it.
Wow.
Secondly, reading for pleasure is more important for children's cognitive development than their parents' level of education. And finally, reading is a gateway skill that makes all other learning possible. If we give children a love for learning and access to learning material, we are done. Trust me, this is the philosophy we use in homeschooling our children. Think about it, a subject like history. Why on earth should it be taught really? You weren't there, I wasn't there. If a child is given a love for reading and access, the child will read. My son reads at history books this thick because he's been given the love for reading and access to it. So these are some of the ways we are intervening and hacking away at inequity.
Wow, yeah, you put a lot into 5 minutes. That's impressive. Learning to read versus reading to learn. Awesome. Now my boys are in trouble. They're going to have to read more. Sally, I saw you nodding vigorously when I was speaking. I'm sure you have some exciting things to share. Take it up.
Yes, I was actually very excited by Yaw's project. But just to talk about Child Lifeline, Child Lifeline's focus is basically on street children. So these are children who are not just not going to school, they are homeless. They're sleeping in the markets, in bus stations, you know, wherever they can find. So we have a drop-in center in Bagada where we have, well, pre-COVID, we would receive about 70 children coming every week. They would come, it's a place for them to have a shower, wash their clothes. They're given 2 meals, receive basic first aid or help with accessing medical attention. And most importantly, we do counseling and try to find out where they're from. Is there any member of the family they're willing to go back to? And where we can, we reunite them with a member of their family, having carried out visits to the family in advance to make sure that they would be welcome back home and the environment is suitable. And I can tell you that we've had reactions from family members ranging to blessings and gratitude for restoring a lost child to them, to curses and threats to the child if the child is returned. And then when we can place them back at home with a family member, we want to make sure that they are enrolled back in school or in some form of vocational training, and Child Lifeline will pay all the educational costs related to that. And we do have children that have gone all the way through tertiary education and have graduated from university. We also have a residential home, and some of the most vulnerable and the youngest and those that we feel need to be taken off the streets straight away, we move to our residential home. It's for boys. Unfortunately, we don't have the resources yet to open a school for girls, but as 90% of the children living on the streets are boys anyway, we find that that's where there is the greatest need. And in the residential home, they are placed back in school or vocational training. And again, we continue to support them. It's more or less like a boarding house. We still continue the efforts to reconcile them with family members, to reunite them, because we believe the best place for a child is with its family. And so those efforts continue. And again, where we are able to do so, we continue to monitor the child, make sure it's placed back in formal education or vocational training, and will continue to support the costs of that education and training. We, with the help of a grant from the Consortium for Street Children, which is a UK-based organization, are just starting a project looking at some of the out-of-school children in Oworoshoki, which is a slum area in Lagos. A lot of the children, if you go there during school hours, you will see that they are scavenging on the rubbish dumps, selling pure water. They're not in school. So we did a mini survey. We found that actually a lot of those children have homes in Oworoshoki, but they are just not going to school. The parents are too poor, and they are wandering the streets. So we have a project that is just starting to get 40 children back into school this year, and we're working to identify those children. But because this problem of street children it's a multifaceted problem. It's not just a question of getting the children registered and back in school, but it's also dealing with the parents. It's a family problem. In many cases, there are problems in the home. We found that a lot of the children, I think there are some statistics that say that about 85% of Nigerian children have suffered some form of domestic violence or the other, either psychological or physical. We do have a culture where, you know, people believe spare the rod, spoil the child, but sometimes it goes too far. So we want, in tandem with identifying these children and getting them back into local schools, and we will pay their, you know, uniforms and books and things like that. We also want to run parenting classes for the parents and provide some basic vocational classes for the mothers. So things that will help them to earn a living, because poverty is a major factor in you know, forcing these children out onto the streets.
Wow.
I'm not sure whether I've used up my time. I'm watching Bernard's face closely.
Sally, you have, but luckily you'll get another chance to elaborate. But
okay, good.
Thank you. I didn't know that the boy child had any hope, because a lot of times when we talk about interventions, the boys are assumed to be doing well. And 90% of children on the street are boys. And I'm sure what is true for Lagos is true for Accra. So it's very serious. And I would like you to elaborate later on the drop-in center, residential home, and other things. Really interesting. Thank you, Sally. Okay, let's turn to Naomi now. In my line of work, I've interviewed people from Naomi's school, because she's literally tearing her hair out trying to deal with educating our kids within this very difficult time. So Naomi, I know a little bit about your struggle. So tell us some of the interventions you're trying to put up and how it's gone so far, Naomi.
All right. Thank you, Bernard. So at Alpha Beta, we're in the private education space. As it stands now, we're having to, in the light of COVID, deliver virtually, which is something that most schools all over the world had to quickly put together when the pandemic hit. But of course, I recognize that a lot of children don't have access to virtual learning. You know, this is something that is reserved for very few children, because even with children who parents can afford the devices and the data, which is a major problem for a lot of people, some of the parents are simply not even available to supervise their children. So the entire virtual learning journey, I know it's not just in Ghana, it's something that a lot of parents have struggled with, a lot of children have struggled with. And of course, we appreciate that it doesn't, it's not the same as physical teaching, but given the constraints that we are all under right now, it's something that, at least for children who are able to participate in, it's better than nothing. So that's just one intervention on that front. But one of the, as I mentioned in my earlier introduction, You know, one of the other projects we're working on is really trying to address the inequities of basic and secondary education. In Ghana, we have free education at the basic level. We have free education now at secondary level. And this year, for the first time, we will have the first year group of students who will be writing their, well, they're just about finished writing their WASI exams. And so Ghana is churning out about 375,000 graduates from free SHS. So it's the first batch of students who, it's a large number because it's the first time it's free. Prior to this, the number was a lot lower, but the concern is that going forward, a large percentage of these young people are not going to be able to go into tertiary education, either because their parents can't afford it or because there simply aren't enough university places for them to take. So for me, it's a big concern, because apart from anything else, there are definitely going to be gaps in terms of the quality of the education that they've received and whether it has even prepared them for the world of work. Now, I'm sure you would agree with me that we probably don't have the luxury of time to even put all these young people through university, because if we're going to be churning out close to 400,000 of these young people every year, you know, in the next 3, 4, 5 years, we will have major problems, because of course there's already high rates of unemployment, and these young people, if they're coming out, they don't have the skills that they need, and they're already unemployed people. They're already unemployed university graduates. So really and truly, the SHS students will be jobs. So the intervention that Skill Up Africa is working on now is looking at a mass model that will give hands-on training and entrepreneurship training to young people. Of course, the ideal situation is that there should be more jobs to be able to employ people. But given that we don't have that now, we believe that if young people are able to grasp the concepts of entrepreneurship and learn a practical skill of some sort, it'll at least give them an opportunity to make money. And I think that that's the major thing that as a continent we should be concerned with, because if we're not giving young people opportunities to make money, then we are looking you know, at higher crime rates. We're looking at more people trying to cross the Sahara Desert and, you know, find themselves in other countries, etc. For me, it's a huge problem that we should all be extremely concerned about. And we are hoping that the model that we are going to create is one that can be replicated all over Africa, because as a continent, we need something that works, and something that works very fast to help us solve this problem. Otherwise, in the next 10 years, we're just going to have problems we can't solve. So Bernard, I'll hand over. Hopefully I didn't use all my time.
You did not, thank you. Actually, you did. Thank you, Naomi. Skill Up Africa, very, very interesting indeed. We'll come back to that as well. So let's now come to where we started. Nike, now you have your original 5 minutes.
Thank you, Bernard. Okay, so we realized that the data over the years was just coming out with a lot of figures that we were puzzled what was happening. And so a group of us just sat and decided that, you know, in the big picture of all the problems in the education ecosystem, the access, the out-of-school children, and the quality of education, we particularly wanted to look at what was happening to why our children weren't learning, why the learning outcomes were quite low in Nigeria at the primary, secondary level, at least at the basic education level, because that forms what happens to the child and their life outcomes. So for us in the big puzzle, we decided that we were going to focus on the quality of education to improve the learning outcomes as Teach for Nigeria. So what we did was, because a lot of research has come out to say that, you know, teachers have a big part to play in the learning outcomes of children. What happens in the classroom is absolutely key for children. And so the quality of the teacher is absolutely critical. And what is also happening is that children in disadvantaged, marginalized communities, in the slums, in the rural areas, in places where they don't have access to all the sort of the modern, the wonderful ways that education, you know, interventions are going, you know, they're underserved. So we decided that we would work with a model that's already global. And so we reached out to Teach for All, which is a global organization that now has presence in about 50 different countries. And we decided to establish one of the first teach initiatives across Africa. And aside from Ghana, Nigeria came on next after Ghana. So what we do is we deal very much with disadvantaged communities. So we recruit young, talented Nigerian graduates. And increasingly now we have started recruiting also existing teachers in the classroom as well in public schools. So we recruit through a very rigorous process. We train, we spend 2 years training. So it's a leadership initiative. It's primarily a leadership initiative, but we want our leaders to teach. We want them to lead in the classroom. We want them to turn around the learning outcomes of what is happening in our classroom with our children. We want them to teach differently. We want them to look at what the curriculum says that they should teach, and then begin to also put in 21st century skills within that. So we recruit, and then we place in underserved, disadvantaged communities. We're currently in Ogun State, Lagos State, Kaduna, and we hope to expand across Nigeria to 6 geopolitical regions in the next couple of years. By this, later this year, we will have 400 fellows. We call them fellows, teachers in the classroom. We've been, this is our 3rd cohort. We've been operating for 4 years now. And so what's actually phenomenal is not only what our teachers are doing in the classroom and turning around learning outcomes, is what our fellows are also doing in the community. So we're creating a much bigger ecosystem of teachers and fellows. So they're setting up libraries, they're building toilets, they're putting water systems in place. They are teaching children, weekends. They are, so they themselves, we have right now 72 active projects in the community that are turning around other educational issues outside of that. So, and then finally, we've recently gone into a partnership with Profuturo, and we are now they've asked us to now teach 37,000 public school teachers across Nigeria. So it's a huge intervention for us. So Bernard, if you don't mind, I'd like to share a video. So Prince, please go ahead, please. Prince, we can't, there's no sound, please. Apologies for that. If you just let us know, if you could play that again, and hopefully we'll have sound with that. Bernard, I hope I'm not using too much of my time. Okay, so one other attempt now.
Teach for Nigeria was established in 2016, inspired by the vision that one day all Nigerian children will have access to an excellent education. Teach for Nigeria takes a unique approach by eliminating educational inequity by enlisting Nigeria's most promising future leaders in the effort. As the first and only organization to partner young leaders from diverse academic backgrounds in an extended service initiative, we recruit, train, and support outstanding graduates and professionals as fellows to deliver an excellent education in under-resourced Nigerian schools. Teach for Nigeria has grown substantially in its 3 years of operation. From a pilot program of 44 fellows in its first year in Ogun and Lagos states, Teach for Nigeria scaled and expanded to Kaduna State in 2018, with an additional cohort of 172 outstanding graduates teaching as full-time teachers, working daily to improve the educational and life prospects of approximately 13,000 students with clear impact. Teach for Nigeria recently recruited the 3rd cohort of 47 fellows in 2019. The next 5 years will be critical as we work to grow towards our target of placing over 1,500 fellows to serve nearly 200,000 of Nigeria's poorest students by 2024, with an ultimate goal of expanding to all 6 geopolitical regions of Nigeria by our 10th year of operation, impacting over 500,000 primary school children. Teach for Nigeria has crossed several important milestones in the course of its 3 years, signing an MOU with partner state governments and expanding to northern Nigeria. In this time, we have successfully proven that outstanding young leaders in Nigeria can, with adequate training and support, make a profound impact on the lives of children in under-resourced schools. The early successes of Teach for Nigeria have only served to illustrate that Teach for Nigeria must continue to grow in order to match the enormous scale of education inequality facing the country as a whole. This is an exciting moment for Teach for Nigeria, as Teach for Nigeria has the opportunity to transition from an experimental phase to an enduring institution with strong roots in the Nigerian context. Support at this opportune moment has the potential to catalyze transformation. With more champions and allies, Teach for Nigeria will be able to effectively expand the scale of its impact to deliver transformational teachers and leaders to thousands more Nigerian children in low-income communities. It's up to me, it's up to you.
Wow. 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 Nika, thank you.
Thank you, Bernard.
I mean, the video is so good. I was going to take it from your salary for taking too much time, but the video has compensated.
I used some of Naomi's time.
Wow. So look, this is awesome. And two quick things before we go on. For our audience, you may want to send your comments or questions to the chat or the Q&A section of the chat. So please send your questions. I can see a nice thread there. So Sally gets them off the streets. Yaw teaches them how to read. Nike gives them teachers. She turns teachers into leaders. And then Naomi gives them the skill to prepare them for the job market. So it's like a nice flow. So it starts from Sally, ends with Naomi. That's one way of looking at it. So before we take questions from the audience, I'm just going to open the floor for each of you. And this is really rapid fire. A couple of things. What have you heard so far from other panelists that you think you can incorporate into what you do? And number two, how scalable is your solution? All right. So we are listening to you from different parts of the world. How scalable and replicable is your solution to other contexts? This is important for us to just see what we can copy and what we can't copy. So who wants to go first? I'm going to leave it open. Sally, you want to go first? Oh, yeah.
I'm happy to go first. I think as you said, sorry, yeah.
Sally, I'll follow you.
Okay. I think as you said, Bernard, all of the different interventions come together. They are all necessary. And in fact, intervention in many other areas is also necessary, to arrive at the society that we want to see, the good society. For instance, some of the other things that we have seen is the need, actually, as I said, I spoke before about the families, the need for better counseling for families, for better parenting. We also need better infrastructure. Nika's Teach for Nigeria is a fantastic initiative, and getting good teachers, you cannot overemphasize how critical it is to have the right teacher. It makes all the difference. But even the physical infrastructure, for instance, the 40 children that we want to put back into local schools in Oworoshoki, we visited the schools. The schools themselves are overcrowded. They lack facilities. So at the same time as you are just trying to get the children back into school, you are also going to start looking for how do you crowdfund or raise other funds for the public schools, even make them places that the children are going to want to stay in, go to every day, and where they can learn. So, the good teachers is critical. but there are so many different pieces, and the solution is really multifaceted and needs to be tackled from many different angles.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, it's beautiful how all of these come together. And well, I love what Teach for Nigeria is doing. And before we get to that though, I mean, there are about 11 or so factors that go into equity. I mean, the quality of teaching, infrastructure, like Sally mentioned, yeah, all of these things. But one of the reasons why we are going this route is that it's not that the teacher is not important, but you, in a way, circumvent that, you know, with the online platform and the online community, you know, and you can have access to other people who can give input without having a teacher in the classroom. Because I think we should not mix up education and schooling. At the end of the day, we want our children educated, not necessarily gone through a school and a building, you know, with ABC, you know what I'm saying? You know, so how do we get that end product? Do we have to go through a physical building to have X number of teachers to come out with that product? Or are there other means of doing it? So we are thinking outside the box and saying, we are being disruptive, you know, like the COVID-19 has made us, you know, all of a sudden people found their children at home, you know, and still had to give them an education, whether or not there's a teacher, whether or not there's a classroom, whether or not there's a library. I'd love to partner with Sally in terms of getting street children to be able to access what we have, because the truth is that this still costs money. For us now, it's a social enterprise. It's cheap, it's cost effective, it's just 33 Ghana cedis a month, but that's still a lot for some people. You know, so we are looking at getting to a phase where we can get both individuals and corporates to sponsor people like street children to be able to access the same platform, you know, that people are accessing in America or Norway or wherever it is. So I love to see collaborations like that. Like World Vision, you know, sponsors Children of Compassion. We can sponsor children to read because, well, trust me, that will be a match. I mean, food is important, shelter is important, but teaching, give them this skill for life, that's the real kicker.
Wow, nice one. So the Perbi Cups and Child Lifeline could have a collaboration. Who knows?
Yep, I'm going to get in touch with you.
Of course.
Yes.
Of course. And I'm sure the kids will love the books behind you. A nice bookshelf, by the way. Interesting books there. Naomi, what have you heard that has excited you, and how can we leverage what you're doing to the next level?
Okay. So, I mean, everybody's project is exciting. Everybody is, you know, impacting young people in a different way. I think what would be interesting would be perhaps looking at how, you know, these employability and entrepreneurship skills can even be passed down to younger children. Because of course, let's not, you know, not everybody is going to go to school and finish school. That's the reality, you know, so children who are on the street, you know, unfortunately in Ghana, up until recently, there wasn't even an opportunity for children to rewrite their BEC. So if they missed that boat, then that was basically it. So now you have young people, 15, 16, 17, 20, 21, 22, who never finished school and then don't really have much opportunity to go back and finish. But I think, again, for me, my views on education have changed drastically. I see education is really a means to an end. So I think that we need to stop thinking of it in such a traditional sense of, you know, everybody has to do the same path, they have to pass exams. You know, we all went to school so that we can do something meaningful and productive and hopefully put food on the table. Now, if you can do that without having to go through formal schooling, why not? You know, and of course, formal schooling is not for everybody. I think that we've been trying for too long, we've been trying to push everybody through the formal school system. And there are people who are making way more money than those of us who went to school, you know, and I think that for me, you know, even in Africa alone, our setup of how business, because if you go to the marketplace, there are people who are making a lot of money. A lot of them haven't been to school. And I think that we need to look for local solutions to our problems, you know. So instead of pushing everybody through university, and half of them, you meet them, they're learning some subject that they never intend to use. You know, they're doing marketing, or they're doing Swahili or Russian or some weird subject which you don't necessarily going to use for anything. But you go to the marketplace, there are people who are not even necessarily literate, but they know how to do business, they know how to make money. How can we utilize some of those experiences and make sure that young people, you know, have a source of income and can have a sustainable living for themselves and their families going forward? So I think that that's one of the, you asked about scaling up as well. I think for us, technology is a big thing. if we can use technology to be able to get people all over the country or all over Africa to learn, a very basic entrepreneurship course, which touches on loads of different things, whether it's digital marketing, whether it's customer service. And also we will look at, in one of the courses as well, we're looking at what sort of industries can hire a large number of people. So if you look at the tourism sector, for example, can we train people to be able to take up jobs in the tourism sector? Because you don't have to go to university for that. But they will need good customer service skills, they will need good communication skills, and also a basic understanding of entrepreneurship is useful, because it's the difference between you making the business money or not. So Bernard, I'll hand over back to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Naomi. Nike, at the Accra event a few months back, one of your guys impressed me so much. I forget his name, but on the panel, he spoke many years above his age. Is he your typical graduate? I mean, he was so, insightful in his presentation. I guess he's from Teach for Nigeria, right?
Yes, Bernard, that was Henry. So Henry is now an alumni of Teach for Nigeria, but he went through the 2-year leadership development with us. And he was placed in the classroom in a school system. So yes, Bernard Henry is a perfect example of the phenomenal quality of
Henry Asumadu or something.
That we have. And if a lot of our fellows are out in the ecosystem now. They're being hired to work in government as special assistants to support government. Some of them have gone out and started other education initiatives to solve other problems that they found in the classroom. So, I'll give you an example. So, one of the fellows during the COVID period realized that she needed to reach her children in the poor communities in Ogun State, where the schools were. And the kids obviously hadn't been going to school, had no access to radio, TV, or even the internet. So a lot of our fellows then decided, how were they going to engage the children to learn? So because learning can take place anywhere. Schooling has to be about learning, not just for this, as has been said, about just sending children to school. They have to learn. They have to be able to read and write and achieve the learning outcomes that we want. So this lady just decided that how does she reach the children? So they went out, they would do visits, obviously within, the safety measures, etc. But then a group of them got together and then they talked to a Nigerian company. They produced a locally made technology gadget. They took the Nigerian curriculum, they put it on this gadget, and they got sponsors and bought many of these gadgets and went out and gave it to the children. And so the children were able to learn during this period. They would follow up with them every week. They would give them assignments. I mean, this is amazing, some of the stuff that our fellows are doing. Amazing stuff.
And it's interesting to see questions pouring in already. So if you just joined us, this is the ALIWA Conversations, and we're having a conversation about inequity in education. And our panel is a rich one. We have Dr. Yaw Perbi of the Perbi Cabs. We have Olanike Akerele Desouza, who's a board member of Teach for Nigeria. We have Sally Udoma, Secretary for the Child Lifeline Nigeria, and Dr. Naomi Adjepong, Director of Operations, Alpha Beta Education Center, Accra, Ghana. So far, you've missed some very important things, but you haven't missed too much because we would have this video up after the presentation for those of you just tuned in to get a second bite or a first bite of the cherry. Let me try and read some questions because we've had a few. Ayodeji Bankole Olushina, did I get it right? He has a couple of questions. To Yaw, he says, brilliant presentation. What are your recommendations for leisure reading in terms of percentages? Also, since the service you provide is on a digital infrastructure, what is the penetration rate? How are you working to increase adoption? So Yaw, that's a 3-in-1 from Ayodeji to you. Take it.
Very good questions. Very good questions. And we will recommend a minimum of 30 minutes a day leisure reading. Interestingly, you know that it's a child who loves reading who will do a lot of reading. So some of the children do way more than that. In fact, sometimes some of the children read, about 1,000 minutes a week.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
But one of the important things that, in relating to this question we found is that, in 2018, there was a study about the outcomes of free basic education in Ghana. And it revealed that the implementation of free basic education was successful in terms of net enrollment rate, but the quality of teaching and the learning delivery in most schools had fallen because of the high pupil-teacher ratio. And they recommended supplementary or complementary services like the library services that we offer. But somehow, because of COVID-19, what was supposed to be supplementary has rather become a main meal. So if you're asking about percentages, actually a lot of our children now, this is what they are doing for school. And so we've actually shifted to go according to the Ghana Education Service curriculum, so that although we've made the learning fun with activities every day and there's a weekly online hangout and things like that, if you follow it, it's fun learning about plants, etc., but you're actually going according to the curriculum, without being in a classroom and a teacher beating you and stuff, stuff like that. You are right about the digital penetration, because that's one of the challenges that we are facing. I think Nike mentioned that earlier on in her general presentation. The digital divide is a reality, but fortunately, I think that in Africa, because of the whole mobile telephony phenomenon, people at least have a mobile phone. Although there are other issues with that in terms of, men in low-income countries are 90% more likely to own a mobile phone than women. So even there we have challenges. We can't do this alone, and that is why we are sharing. We are here as fellows. We are people who don't just whine about the problems in society. We are showing that we're doing something about it. But we also don't want to seem naive, as if we can do everything about it. And so that is where we need government intervention too, because if there's no broadband in the area, there's no broadband in the area. How much data can you buy when you live on $1 a day? All right. And so those are some of the areas we encourage. That's the role of government, for infrastructure, provide the infra underneath, so that we can build on it, right? So for example, in Canada, in 2016, the telecoms regulator literally declared, internet services a basic human right, a basic human need, and that's what it's become. It's like water now, So good question. We are doing what we can on our part as private individuals, but we challenge our colleagues in government, to seriously look at devices and data.
Fantastic. There are a couple of questions for Nike. Nike, this question is from the same Ayodeji. As an education organization, how can one be part of the work going on at Teach for Nigeria and ALIWA? And then number two, in your research, did you come across the role of funding and finance in the access to quality education equation? This is from Ayodeji. I hope the questions are clear, Nike.
Yes, thank you. Ayodeji, hi. I've tried to answer one or two things online already. But yes, so if in terms of involvement with ALIWA and Teach for Nigeria, so please go on our websites. ALIWA has a website, Teach for Nigeria has a website. Please reach out to us and call. And I'm sure there will be someone to obviously let you know how you can be involved with us. Now, your question around funding is absolutely critical. Education funding is not getting the right level of funding that it needs. When I looked at the funding for Nigeria versus the funding for Ghana, I mean, generally in Africa, we are not allocating adequate sums, percentages of our annual budgets into education. And we're not linking that to our increasing population across Africa. Africa has the largest youth population in the world, and it's only going to get worse. So they tell us in Nigeria that population-wise, we're going to be the third largest population-wise by 2050. That is so scary for us in Nigeria, because we already have 13 million children out of school. So allocating funding, government allocating funding into education is absolutely critical. But the issue here is that we all know that countries have challenges with funding. We're already struggling. A lot of countries I know that Nigeria is struggling economically with all, you know, issues with the oil price, etc., and the pandemic, etc. So, I mean, I think we need a lot more participation, increasingly more participation of the private sector and the development sector and NGOs into the space, because we simply need to support government. And I know that the private sector is already doing significant amount of investments into education. Ghana and Nigeria have one of the largest numbers of private schooling across Africa. So private sector is already getting involved. NGOs, development sector are already funding, but we need to keep doing this because we can't do this without funding. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to address some of the inequity issues that we have.
Yeah, thank you. This question is from Kofi Dazi, who's, I'm not sure if it's from the Sankofa class, but I think this will go to Naomi and possibly Sally. His question is, what happens when we intentionally prepare post-secondary students for work vis-a-vis potential loss of appetite for higher education? What is the trend? I don't know if the question is clear. Basically, in your skills training programs, people could be, say we are ready to work, no need to go to university. After secondary school, I know what to do. Is there a risk there? What can you share, Naomi and possibly Sally?
All right, so I think I mentioned that briefly earlier on about us having to change the way that we perceive education. You know, if education is a means to an end, then if somebody feels they can make, you know, that end after secondary school, then why not? You know, are we just forcing children to go to higher education for the sake of it? You know, and I think that that's a very key point that we need to look at, because if as a society we become so hung up on collecting certificates, which is one of the cultures that we have on the continent, it is actually really going to deprive people from opportunities, because you know, you might get a young person who's very good at business, you know, and after secondary school, they don't see the need. Perhaps they started a business. You know, I have students, we start students doing entrepreneurship as young as primary 4, right? So you get children who really have the appetite for doing it. You know, you could get someone who starts a business when they're 10, 11. If that business has taken off, what reason do they have to go to university? And I know people who didn't do an undergrad degree, but because of the experience they've had, they've been able to go on to do a master's. You know, so at some later point, they might find a course that is more relative. It's more relevant for them. But pushing them because they're 18, they finish secondary school, they must go to university. A lot of young people end up making the mistake of just picking a course for the sake of it. So I hope that answers Kofi's question.
Sally, anything to add?
Yes, I agree completely with what Naomi said. I don't think we should push children into university education. It's not the be all and the end all. In fact, I think actually what we need is we need more technical colleges, we need more artisanal training, we need more entrepreneurial training. What we want are people who are educated, and as Yaw said, educated does not equal schooled necessarily. So we want to educate our children to have open minds, to think a certain way, to be enlightened, to be able to manage their affairs well, to be self-reliant. And that does not necessarily mean a university education. You can make a success of a business as a cobbler if you've got the right mindset and you understand how to grow your business, how to approach it. That's really what I think we want to encourage a lot more of.
Sally, I'll stay with you, because there's a very innocuous question, but it seems innocuous, but a very serious question that Padmore is asking. Padmore says, what are the roles of parents in a child's education? Seems pretty obvious, but I feel he essentially wants a bit of commentary around what is possible if parents don't play any role. Is any of this possible if parents decide, I'm not interested at all? And how do we deal with that?
It's very, very difficult. And, you know, that's why I have, you know, said several times that it's not just about the child, it's about the environment that the child is brought into. So if you have parents that are not interested in their child, or who are themselves narrow-minded, closed off, superstitious, it's going to be very difficult for that child to grow up as an enlightened person. They are not encouraged enough. And, you know, I'm sorry to say, I think part of our culture actually needs to change. Because, for instance, you know, I don't know what it's like in Ghana, but in a lot of Nigerian schools, you have teachers who just want the children to parrot back to them exactly what they have given to the children in handouts. Don't ask any questions, you know, because first of all, the teacher may not know the answer and will be embarrassed, and they don't like that. But also, they are not seeking original thinking. They are not encouraging the children to be independent-minded. And the same goes for your parents. Unfortunately, there are too many parents who respond to being questioned, you know, with a clip round the ear, don't be cheeky, you know, sit down, listen to me, do what I say, and don't encourage their children to be inquiring, to want to.
So Sally, how do you deal with that in your, because what you do is you deal with kids from poor communities. Yeah. Sometimes their parents are home but don't want to send them to school. Do you have to go to the parents? How do you bring them into the equation?
We do. We send our social worker to visit with the parents or the family. They sit, they talk, they counsel. Then we will invite the parents to our center and sit the parent down with the child, with our social worker, and have a three-way conversation about counseling and good parenting, and, you know, that there are better ways to train a child than to beat them. You should, you know, encourage, show, teach by example, listen to your children. They have something to say. And, you know, we don't send the child back with a parent or, you know, unless the child is willing to go. So okay. It's a three-way conversation, and we do just as much counseling of the parents as we do of the child.
Fantastic, thank you. A few more questions have come in. This is from Olanike Yusuf, and Ni is from the Karifiko class, so we're raining. Ni wants to ask Yaw, how are you thinking of digital books and e-library in your program? Fairly straightforward, Yaw.
Yes. So initially it started out as physical books. Actually, we've shipped about 5,000 books to Ghana. And then COVID hit. And so we had to pivot. And so now everything is online, everything. Wow. So we had some partners, global partners, and together we provided about 40,000 resources to the children who access this. So everything is online now. And some of the books, actually, we've had to produce ourselves, ebooks, because there was certain content that we didn't have contextualized. So for example, we're teaching about the importance of recycling and reusing, you know, and all of that. And we didn't have anything that was to the Ghanaian context, but there are recyclers and the recycle process in Ghana. So we wrote a whole new book, you know, an ebook, and also with an audio version. And also because we like we said, in dealing with equity, it's important the level of reading of the child, we made sure it was in different lexicals. So the same thing was in different range of, depending on the complexity of the reader, so that a little child could read it and get the grasp of it, and an older child will have a more sophisticated text. Yeah, so everything is online, everything is digital, which is the other interesting thing. So now we have people joining not only from Ghana, we have, you know, from Nigeria, South Africa, even you know, outside Africa, because that's the world we live in now.
Yeah, I may be an old-fashioned parent, but our boys like gadgets. And so we try to discourage the use of gadgets and give them hard copy books. But they're getting smart. They're like, Daddy, I want to read the book on the tablet. But when you leave them, then they are watching Paw Patrol. So
yeah, Paw Patrol.
Yeah. So I mean, what am I supposed to do? Get them what do you call it, Kindles at this age, or do I incentivize them, one book, one video? I mean, what's going on here?
Well, I think we need to get out of our old paradigm of not liking digital. It's come to stay, and this is it. I mean, I prefer physical books. You can see my, and I used to travel. Sometimes I have like 10 books in my carry-on, when I can have one iPad or one Kindle with all, how many books. So we need to change our own mindset. But I know that there's also dangers out there in cyberspace. And so one of the courses we give right after the children sign up at the program, we actually send them a Google course in how to stay safe online. And so those are things that we do with the children, but also, there are things we can do with the parents, how to put safety on the gadgets, supervise. For example, our children's Kindle is programmed such that they can only play games at certain times. You can put it will never play the game unless a certain period of the day. So these are some of the tricks we need to teach parents, because
I need to talk to you after this.
These children are digital citizens, and we dare not draw them back. In fact, my children's uncle, Angele's brother, who works in Silicon Valley, says our younger son, who is 8 now, may never learn how to drive. I mean, that is where the world is going, with digitalization and AI and all of that. So don't drag them back, but rather protect and provide framework, including ethical framework. Yes, for them.
We're getting lots of questions. Thank you for your questions. I'm going to try and hurry us on with boxing the questions together. So Naomi and Nike, 2 questions for you together. Curriculum development. How can this impact quality? That's the first question, curriculum development. And then the second one is Enoch Jetua wants to know how his outfit, which is the Ghana National Council of Private Schools, can link up with Teach for Nigeria to revamp private sector education in Ghana. So curriculum development and then partnership with Teach for Nigeria. Naomi, you want to go first?
Sure. I think I tried to answer that question in the chat already, but I'll touch on it briefly. So curriculum development, I agree, is key. Things have changed a lot. A lot of the content that we're treating still in this part of the world is outdated. It focuses a lot on knowledge, but the reality is, if you have a child now in class 1, they're not going to join the job market maybe for another 20 years. So whatever you're teaching them now, by the time they get there, the knowledge will be out of date. So the question is, what transferable skills are you teaching them? Critical thinking, problem solving, design thinking, innovation, creativity. Those things for me are way more important than the actual knowledge or content that we're trying to teach them. And, I know that in Ghana, for example, there's been recent changes in the curriculum which try to incorporate more transferable skills. So I'm hopeful that in the next, in the next few years, we'll be able to see the impact of that.
Thank you. Nike?
Yeah, so I want to support exactly what Naomi has said. Curriculum is absolutely critical. And curriculum in every country, well, at least in Nigeria, resides in the domain of the government. They are in charge of what is in the curriculum for basic education, for secondary, etc. But we, of course, stakeholders can work with government to try and revamp, and there's an ongoing interaction to try and revamp. Definitely, we have a long way to go in terms of getting our curriculum to be relevant for the future of work. I totally support Naomi, because I am currently writing a paper now, just trying to talk about critical thinking, problem solving, creative thinking as underlining skills that we simply must coach and teach our children so that they come out the other end, not only literate, but with these underlining skills to able to solve life's problems and to be able to, even if they become entrepreneurs, they go to vocational centers, they need these skills, these 21st century skills to be able to do this. And teachers therefore need to have the pedagogy of how to teach 21st century skills in the classroom. So I just wanted to very quickly address the gentleman that talked about partnership with Teach for Nigeria. I believe this is from an organization in Ghana, private schools in Ghana, I think, Bernard.
Yes.
So I would like to encourage you to please reach out to an organization called Lead for Ghana. They used to be Teach for Ghana. They came in a year before us. So they're called Lead for Ghana. They have a very active website. Please reach out to them. They're doing phenomenal work, just like we are doing, but in Ghana. And hopefully they can help support you there.
All right, we have just 5 minutes to go. I'm going to give 1 minute each to Sally and Yaw on the final 2 questions. And Henry from Teach for Nigeria put a question through, and I think maybe Sally, you addressed that. How do children in low-income communities without access to internet, electricity, and devices catch up with their learning after being let out due to this pandemic? How can we help them catch up? Okay, and then Yaw, this is what are your views on making daycare and
I think Bernard is frozen, right?
preschool watch videos all day and play? So Sally, you have a minute. Yaw, you have a minute as we wrap this up.
Sorry, I did not hear your question. You were frozen.
Oh, intentional about educating our young preschoolers. The norm is to have them watch videos or play. This is the question. I hope you got me this time.
I'll do my best. I got part of it, but Sally, you go ahead.
Yes, how do we help them catch up? It's a big problem. The COVID period has really highlighted the inequalities because those children from good backgrounds with enlightened parents, educated parents, and with the money have been able to continue learning online. But those, as you said, that do not have all of those advantages have been left behind. Lagos State made a big effort during this period by putting lessons on the radio so that, hopefully the children may have access to radios. And I know for some of our children, actually, we were using the radio classes to help the children. But it will require a big effort on the part of the schools when they reopen, and they will be reopening very shortly, I believe. It will require a big effort on the part of the schools and NGOs assisting the schools to help those children to catch up. I think it's going to be a monumental task, but it has to be done.
Yeah, you have the last word.
Well, we learn through playing. So I'll encourage the questioner not to underestimate the power of play. We tend to think that if you're serious, then you are about something serious. No, there's a lot of great learning that comes through playing. And so let's encourage, the younger children. But in all, for me, the essence of what I'm saying is let's get children to love learning. Once they love learning, they can learn anything at any stage of their lives.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Dr. Yaw Perbi, co-founder of the Perbi Cups Library, Ghana, Olanike Desouza, education consultant, board member, Teach for Nigeria, Sally Udoma, Secretary, Child Lifeline Nigeria, and Dr. Naomi Adjepong, Director of Operations, Alpha Beta Education Centers. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to revert to Ayo because I'm sure there are a few announcements going forward about what to expect, where else can you access this content, and how can you become part of the ALIWA family. So Ayo, please take it up.
Thank you so much, Bernard. Thank you, our wonderful panelists. This was such an interesting conversation. I mean, the time flew by. I didn't know that we had taken, 90 minutes practically. Thank you so much. It was such a, riveting conversation. And the interventions at various levels from Sally to Yaw to Nike and Naomi are they're just so interesting. And I wish to acknowledge and thank all our fellows on the panel, Bernard, the moderator, and the fellows in the audience. I've seen questions from quite a number of the fellows. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. ALIWA is about our fellows moving from thought to action. And we can see this afternoon, medical doctors who've dropped their stethoscopes, and their passion has driven them to look at what is happening to our children, from legal luminaries, leaving their wig and gown and trying to get children off the streets and into the classroom. Thank you so much. To Nike, who is trying to make an impact in the quality of education we have in our classrooms with what she's doing with Teach for Nigeria. Thank you everyone this afternoon. ALIWA is about our fellows who have been successful in their various areas of endeavor, but have now moved into making an impact in the larger society. Thank you so much, every one of you. And as you continue to try to make sure we have fairness and equity in the education field, I pray that your efforts continue to be crowned with great success. Thank you so much. If you're listening this afternoon and you're interested in how you can know more about ALIWA, our website is ali-wa.com. So you can go to our website. You can also send us an email at aliwa.leadership@gmail.com, aliwa.leadership@gmail.com, or aliwa@leapafrica.org, aliwa@leapafrica.org. Thank you so much. We've had a very wonderful conversation. The ALIWA conversations are supposed to inspire and motivate every member of the audience to step away from the conversation and begin to find ways that they themselves can make an impact. Thank you so much, and we look forward to hearing more from you. We would be sharing with you a video from Child Lifeline, which is Sally's project. We'll be sharing it with every member of the audience after this conversation. I think we can also share Nike's video, and you'll be having a recording of this afternoon's conversation. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks very much. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Bernard. Thanks, everyone.
Please stay tuned. We'll be having another big event in October, and we'll be reaching out to everyone who's been with us this afternoon, so you can join us in our October event. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. I'll send you a video as well for Perbi Cups.
Oh, thank you.
Great.
We'd like to have a video, yeah, so we can also share.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
God bless.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.